Madam Deputy President, I rise in reply to speak briefly and to, in the first instance, thank those members who've spoken on the motion, and I very much appreciate their contributions. I note the support that has been expressed there from the independent members of the chamber and from the ALP member who spoke in relation to the motion, and I'm very pleased to see that support. A couple of things I'll pick up on. I think it's interesting, the member for Rumney and also the member for McIntyre spoke about their surprise about the revelations that the Integrity Commission doesn't have jurisdiction over MPs in general elections during the electoral period because technically they're not MPs. And actually I'd point out that it's an even more interesting circumstance, because thinking that through while you were discussing that here in your contributions, it's actually a difference between the two houses, because when a general election is called for the lower house, Parliament is prorogued, and so that indicates the end of those members' times as members of Parliament, and they become candidates. And at that point in time is when we are led to believe from the Integrity Commission has no jurisdiction over them during that election period. We're different to that here. Parliament is still in existence across the time that we campaign for our elections, and as the member for McIntyre rightly pointed out, we actually stay members right up until election day. So we are not in a similar situation of participating as a candidate for election while also not being a member of Parliament and therefore under the jurisdiction of the Integrity Commission. So here's an interesting thing in itself too, is it not? That actually, as members in the two houses, there's quite a distinct difference over our accountability.
Interesting point.
Related to our integrity across the time that we campaign. We will never have the luxury, when we are running for re-election as members here, we will never have the luxury of being absent from the responsibilities that we are going to be held to account for through the Integrity Commission and its processes. We will always have that sitting over and above us and being accountable to it while we campaign for election. But apparently we're given to believe and understand that is not the case for our colleagues in the lower house. That's quite extraordinary. Quite extraordinary. Now, it may be that I have misconstrued that too. It may be that there's actually a different reality to this that needs even further examination and exploration. And as the member for McIntyre rightly points out, this is precisely the sort of matter that could be unpicked within the context of this proposed Joint Select Committee of Inquiry into the election. And I would say, again, in and of itself, that itself should be enough justification to hold it. Why wouldn't we unpick this in the most open and accountable way through a parliamentary inquiry process? The member for Rumney also raised the unresolved electoral reforms, and I agree that in the absence of those being progressed, some things may come up in this process were it to go ahead that could be valuable to feed through into the ongoing progress of those reforms. The member for Launceston, thank you for your contribution. You mentioned and contributed some of those comments from Richard Hur as an expert on these matters and his entreaty to Parliament and to the Premier to engage with this process. I think that's valuable input from an outside expert on the potential value of this. And I thank you for your support of the motion. Member for McIntyre, thank you for your contribution. I agree it's not necessarily an easy decision to come to. It isn't something that has occurred before, so it does actually ask us to give it due consideration. And I agree with you that the most appropriate way to approach this, and why I have proposed it in this way, is that both Houses of Parliament would do this in a joint fashion through a joint select committee. And we've seen that other states who progress these sorts of processes take that approach too as the most appropriate. I won't say much more on that other than to thank you for your contribution. I'm reluctant to speak in too much detail in response to the government's contribution. I think I preempted most of the things that they would say in the contribution I made at the beginning of this debate, and my views on those positions are contained in my first speech. I will just say a couple of short things. One is that, as I did speak about earlier, but I will reinforce now briefly, yes, the Electoral Commission exists and has a particular statutory role. Absolutely nothing in this proposal takes away from, preempts, overtakes or replicates that role. Just like, as I said, in every other state where the Parliament engages in a review of elections, they also have their own electoral commissions, and it's not an either-or matter. It's something that can quite happily, in fact happily in terms of public confidence and the public being reassured that appropriate processes are there, you can have an electoral commission undertaking its activities and providing a report on those activities, perhaps reviewing them internally. That's fine. They are answerable to the Parliament, and one key way that we have statutory bodies be answerable to the public, to the Parliament, is through things like inquiries and committees. So it's entirely reasonable. I am not in any sense, I will say right here and very clearly, I am not in any sense impugning the Electoral Commissioner or the Electoral Commission in putting forward this motion. To suggest that I am doing so is absolutely disgraceful on the part of this government, absolutely disgraceful. How dare they verbal me in that way and suggest that that's what I was doing. If that's what I am being accused of doing, that's what the State Government of New South Wales, State Government and Parliament of New South Wales, and the State Government and Parliament of Victoria are also doing. That's what the Federal Parliament and the Federal Government are doing when each of those jurisdictions engages in parliamentary reviews of their elections, alongside the fact that they also have electoral commissions associated with each of the jurisdictions. If I am impugning the Electoral Commissioner and the Electoral Commission, then that accusation is actually, by this government, being levelled at state parliaments and the federal parliament at the same time. Nothing about this motion and the inquiry process that it seeks to establish circumvents any processes currently in place that the Electoral Commission is undertaking. In fact, it's complementary. Reviews and reporting by the Electoral Commission would feed naturally into a parliamentary inquiry into the election. They will become excellent and valuable pieces of evidence for the Electoral Commission to put forward. That would be the normal course of events. Dual elections are in fact held in other jurisdictions, of course. They have never been held here, and no other jurisdiction has the particular arrangements in place around their upper house that we have had here in this state for 170 years now. So Tasmania is different to other jurisdictions, and while we may say dual elections are held elsewhere, why on earth couldn't they be held here? Well, one of the reasons might be because one of the things we might do to note the impact of dual elections is to note other jurisdictions who almost without, I believe actually without exception, have party-dominated upper houses. Tasmania, until last year, had never had a party-dominated upper house, and that is because of the particular design that this state gave to its upper house and the electoral process that sits around it.
167 years, excellent.
167 years.
I think that's the number.
So, of course, it's not a question of whether it's possible to hold dual elections. It's a matter of what the effect and impact of that may be. And it's a particular matter for examination, I believe, through a process such as this inquiry, to ask ourselves, having experienced for the first time in 167 years an instance of concurrent dual elections, what has that meant in relation to the particular design that we have for the elections of this place, the Legislative Council? What impact has it had, given that we did and do have very particular designs in place around our electoral cycles, our electoral rules and the way we operate our upper house elections? What impact have we had? As I said in my speech earlier, I'll repeat it now for emphasis. That question in and of itself warrants an inquiry, just so that we can be made aware and the Tasmanian community can be made aware what impact and ramifications that has had, and have consideration given to that in an ongoing fashion as we go forward. The final thing that can't go by without being commented on, and I thank other members who in their contributions provided support to me on this, that the government would accuse me of being motivated to put forward this proposal for a joint select committee of inquiry, that they would accuse me of doing that for political purposes is extraordinary. It's an appalling accusation to make. Further, it's an absolutely ridiculous accusation to make. What political purpose do I have? I am not a member of a party. I am not associated with any parties. I am an independent in the upper house. I don't face election for another 4 years. There is no political purpose for me to put this forward as a proposal. The government is exposing yet again its glass jaw on this issue. What a shame. What a shame to default to personal attacks and spurious accusations that are meaningless in this place to accuse me of being political in suggesting this. There is absolutely every reasonable justification in a parliamentary democracy such as ours, in a parliamentary system such as ours, that values transparency and accountability, that values the role and functions of the houses of its parliament. There is every reason to contemplate and to progress committees of inquiry of this sort. The reason I know that's true is because they do it frequently in other similar jurisdictions, as we have all canvassed here. To suggest that putting this forward as a proposal for this parliament is based on political motivations, to what end, is absolutely astonishing, it's ridiculous and it's offensive. I suggest that the government, now that it is an historically elected third-term Liberal government in this state, attend to its glass jaw, because, quite frankly, it's far past time that it continue to be reacting in this way that is defensive and personally attacking of members and colleagues in this place. It's inappropriate. It's time to grow up. And if this government had any guts, it would do what its counterparts in other jurisdictions at state level and the federal level do as a matter of course. It would support this effort to improve and strengthen our democracy.
The question is the motion be agreed to. Those that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Against no.
No.
I think the ayes have it.
Vision.
Vision's required. Ring the bells.
Yes. This thing.
Who's doing this? So all members present available to vote, noting that we have a pair and the other half has left the chamber. Unless anyone speaks to the contrary, I'll order that the bells be stopped. Stop the bells and lock the doors, please. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Against no? No. The council will divide and the ayes will pass to the right of the chair and the noes to the left. The Honourable Member for Windermere, teller for the noes. You can have assistance with that from one of your loyal colleagues there to give you the chance to have a go. And Honourable Member for McIntyre, teller for the ayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy.
Note the pair. You need to note it. I haven't signed that time. You need to initial it. Did you initial it? Yeah. Thank you. Out of practice. Order. Result of the division is ayes 8, noes 3. I declare the division passes, is resolved in the affirmative. Could members resume their seats?